So I will also ask people to say something on YouTube as well. There are.
Okay.
I've got an anonymous question.
Okay.
So thank you very much for the explanation, Maharaj. You mentioned that we should make friends with our equals. How can we judge who is our equal?
Okay. How can we judge who is on the same level of Krishna consciousness? Well, it says that in terms of, for example, spiritual practices, we can develop friendship, practically speaking, with anyone who is within the range of 5 years. You know, say like someone who started practicing Krishna consciousness maybe 5 years earlier than us or 5 years later than us. So this category is pretty much equals anyone who is above is senior, anyone who is below is junior, something like that. So these are practical considerations.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Welcome.
Maharaj, just one question from me.
Yeah.
So when we have these nice loving exchanges, see 6 exchanges, but these exchanges can also be based on an ulterior motive.
Yes.
You know, I can impress you to have something from you indirectly, but externally looking like that, you know, I'm having a nice exchange. So how to curb that tendency, or how to first, if one has that tendency, how to subside that tendency, or if we are being influenced by others, how to recognize that tendency in others?
Well, we all have personal motivations in everything, right? We give devotees prasadam, but we want their blessings, right? Or we give donations, but we expect, you know, prosperity to come back. So in the beginning, at least, some material motivation will always be there. So it's not a big problem. But if it is kind of something malicious, then of course it's a problem. Malicious motivations need to be avoided.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
Yes.
Lalita Preeti, you have a question, you can ask directly.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. The question is that to have these exchanges, especially revealing the confidential information and gathering. So the block would be that, you know, the feeling of being judgmental, whether this person being judged or you becoming judgmental. So how to avoid that? And the same thing comes to bit to the other exchanges as well, that to the even bongte bonjayate, when we give the prasadam and take the prasadam, that because we being an international movement, everybody has different sort of background.
Yes.
And it's easy for one to judge others when you go and take prasadam, or when you invite someone for prasadam. So how to overcome that barrier, Maharaj?
Yes. Well, in terms of prasadam, there is an etiquette that seniors should serve and juniors should accept, right? Because if you have juniors serving prasadam, they cannot really do it in a loving way. Because, for example, if they are hungry, they cannot control their senses. Well, if situation is such that you need to engage juniors in serving prasadam, at least first you need to feed them so that they would be, you know, like peaceful in their minds when they serve prasadam and do it lovingly. But additionally, prasadam is served by seniors. That's the Vaishnava etiquette, because, you know, mercy of the Lord comes to seniors first, and then it's passed down to juniors, right? So that's the idea. And juniors, they give donations to seniors, right? So that's how it's happening. And then in terms of revealing our minds, we should reveal our minds only to seniors, meaning that someone is very mature in Krishna consciousness and confidential and expert, right? Otherwise, you know, there is a joke that take my advice, I don't use it anyway, right? That sometimes people are giving us advice, you know, advising us to do something they don't do themselves. So what's the use of that kind of advice? So that means there is a lack of maturity. And of course, tendency to be judgmental is very first and foremost sign of spiritual immaturity, because, you know, the very word judgmental, if you think about it, right? English language is pretty accurate, that it means mental judge, right? In my mind, I imagine myself to be a judge, even though I don't have any position of a judge. And so, as one of my friends says, you know, watching this movie in my own head, I try to project this reality upon others, and others, they just become, you know, totally confused what he or she is doing, you know, that he or she is not in that position to judge me or others, but, you know, this is what's happening. So that's why, you know, revealing our minds should be done only to someone who is very mature and confidential, and not judgmental by in any way. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
You're welcome. Hare Krishna. Lalita Priti.
Any other questions from anyone?
Something on the chat. When I am serving in some preaching services where I have to act as a superior, I go into a mentality of achieving results, but neglecting the principles of caring for the devotees' needs. So how to come out of this exploitative zone, Maharaj? So yeah, it's a good Parashuraman, yeah, Dandavat pranams to him as well. So this is the beginning, that if we realize that we have a problem, then we can actually solve it. So if we realize that we have this tendency to exploit and have some results for ourselves, then we actually can control ourselves. And there are certain triggers, as it is explained, which trigger kind of bad behavior, negative behavior, unwanted behavior. And once we recognize those triggers, we need to be careful to avoid them. That's the first thing. But then the second thing is that we need to go to the root cause. So what makes us, you know, what kind of unfulfilled needs are there in my consciousness which make me, you know, exploitive or selfish. So if we resolve that, then on the root level, then it will not manifest even in the presence of the triggers. So that's kind of short answer to the question. But thank you. Very deep question. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, one more question from my side. See, when we come together, our shortcomings are clearly prominent. We see each other's shortcomings. When we are far away, we don't understand very much each other. But when we come together, there is like we see each other's shortcomings. And could you elaborate, like explain the role of this tolerance and cooperation? How they come into picture when we have, if we want to have these relationships nicely.
Yes. Fault-finding mentality, that's the problem, right? And Prabhupada writes a lot about this fault-finding mentality in his books, and that is to be avoided. So then the big million-pound question is how to avoid the fault-finding mentality, because many times it's easier said than done, right? But I think the question Parashuraman asked is a very good one, because it shows that he is recognizing his own deficiencies, his own faults. And so it's basically two things. We either find faults with others or we find faults with ourselves, right? If we find faults with ourselves, we don't have time to find faults with other people, right? Because I'm too busy trying to become Krishna conscious myself, right? Rather than making other people into how I want them to be, right? And of course, if I am Krishna conscious, then I will not be worried about faults of others, because I will recognize that whatever is happening according to Krishna's plan, right? But then if I am in this problematic or conflicting situation, because I, for over a decade, trying to help devotees and other people in my capacity as mediator or one who is helping with conflict resolution. And I've studied that, and probably the most powerful technique I can recommend out of so many, conflict resolution techniques, professional techniques, which is very much in line with our tradition, is that, this mudra, which is accusation mudra, right? That we are pointing finger at someone's fault. And it's very interesting when one finger is pointing out, then three fingers are pointing back at us. And so these three fingers, they're actually revealing the secret. They're giving us the solution. They help us to understand that we are the problem. And so the three fingers are actually three questions we need to ask ourselves every time we bump into any problem. And that's universal. That's applicable to anything. First question, how have I created this conflict or problem for myself? Then, if we understand how do I cause problem, I can simply stop causing it, right? Then, okay, externally, I've stopped doing that. But then there is a root. And the second question is addressing the root cause. And the root cause is, how do I delude or cheat myself? So obviously, all the problems are happening under the influence of Maya. And Maya is always based on one simple thing: false expectations, unrealistic expectations. I've expected something, it didn't happen, so now I'm upset. And so the less expectations we have from others, the less problems we'll have, right? And then if we answer these two questions, then the third question is very simple and very practical: what to do. And normally, if we act in the opposite way to how we, put ourselves into trouble, then this will be the solution. Exit is always where the entrance is. All right.
Okay, so thank you very much, Maharaj, for that wonderful explanation. And looks like no other questions from anyone. So that leaves me. Maharaj, thank you so much for giving us time.
Hare Krishna.
One more question, looks like, sorry. Sumit, you have one?
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Maharaj, but
no worries.
One thing we often do in Pandavsena, which is just something I thought we'd also do here, is if you could say there's 3 key points you want to hit home from your class right now, what would those 3 points be?
The 3 points are without loving relationships with devotees, there is no chance to become Krishna conscious. This is one point. This is the foundation, sadhu sangha. Without sadhu sangha, we cannot advance. The second key point, maybe someone else can help me, because I can tell my points, but it's good if someone else will bring them up. Anyone else wants to share a key point? What you've learned? No one learned anything? What about yourself? Would you like to share?
Well, about importance of giving, who should we be confidential with? How do we treat different people, and looking at who's senior and who's junior, and I thought that was quite useful.
Very good. Okay. And third was the last one, know how to solve problems, right? Know how, spiritual know-how. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for your time and wonderfully explaining the 4th verse of Nectar of Instruction. There are so many lessons for all of us to learn. And the bottom line is without love and without a nice loving relationship among devotees, we're not going to go anywhere forward. So thank you so much. His Holiness Bhakti Rasayana Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Hopefully we shall see you again sometime soon, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the devotees for your kind attention, and wishing you all the best. Stay safe and stay happy in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much. It's a very nice class.